This is our weekly Facebook Live interview with folks here in the I81 corridor, real estate investors, and in our investor group. And like I always say, there's tons of people in our group. I think our Facebook page is pushing 1,000 people, and there's tons of people in there doing cool deals. And so this is a little bit of a spotlight on those folks. So our guest is Dave Zumbrunn, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then we can get into our conversation.
All right. Thanks, Bill. So, yes. Hi, everybody. Dave Zumbrunn. I am an attorney in the states of Maryland and West Virginia, and also the District of Columbia. And I own Friends Title and Escrow. Friends Title is a title company that is licensed in West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia, and also Florida. And we're working on Pennsylvania. So that said, we partnered up with Bill and Mike, a while back now, probably over a year ago at this point.
I think so. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And we started doing some deals for Bill and Mike, and I've tried to attend as many of the meetup groups as possible. Sorry, we missed last week, but we generally are attending the meetup groups as well, and really have kind of found a niche just in this partnership with Bill and Mike is where it kind of started in working with real estate investors. And again, it kind of started with Bill and Mike and a couple of other investors that we've been working with for a little over a year now, and it's really grown into a niche for our title company.
Yeah.
We've. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, I was just going to say we've done a ton of creative stuff, and I think we should talk a little bit about that because there's a lot of good title attorneys. But some of them don't really get too creative. They just kind of stick to, the basic contract, the basic realtor type deals, and that's fine. But for our group, we need people that can be creative and do these lesser known strategies and make them get to the closing table and close. And so you've been very helpful with that. So I would say let's kind of talk about some of the stuff we've done, and you can elaborate on that, what it looks like from your side of the table. And sure. I think that would be pretty informative. So we've typically done, I'd say the majority of the stuff we do is just like a straight cash deal, and anybody can do that. That stuff's easy. But the stuff that gets a little bit more complicated are the ones that we do that are like the sub-2 loans, the owner finance where the owner does a carryback, some of the commercial deals we've done lately, some of the hard money loans that you put together for us, from representing our side of it. We've closed these storage deals, and those are a lot bigger and a lot more money. And, as we start to loan more money, we want to make sure that we're underwriting these deals good and we have the proper documentation, and the deed of trust is done correctly, and the promissory notes and all that stuff is to a T, so that we're protecting our investor capital and we're protecting ourselves. And you've been able to help us do that. And I think that would be super interesting to kind of talk a little bit about those deals here just to get started, and your involvement in those and what you're seeing from your side of the table.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, as the title attorney, right, I don't represent really buyers or sellers, right? If you want to think of me representing anybody, I kind of represent more or less the contract, right? I'm representing the contract, and my obligation is to follow the terms of the contract and to ensure that it is carried out to the T, right? And when there's a lender involved, to follow those lenders' closing instructions as well, right? And then always, of course, making sure that we are within the bounds of the law, right? So, Bill, you mentioned the subject to type of transactions, right? Where an investor is taking the property subject to an existing deed of trust or mortgage that's secured against that property. We're happy to do those. You know, there's limits, right? Because with these creative financing deals, right, there's different risks associated with these. I've been in the business for over 20 years, and I have a good understanding and appreciation for what those risks are. You know,
Hmm.
each of these different types of strategies may not be, you know, a good fit in every scenario, right? You don't
So true.
use,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't use a hammer to screw in a screw,
Yeah.
right? Or a
Yeah.
screwdriver to
Yeah.
hammer in a nail, right? You might be able
Hmm.
to if you had to, but
Hmm.
really, you know, it's about using the right tool for the right
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Um,
I totally agree with that. That's a great point because the way we look at things is how can we do a deal that makes sense for us, but is still a win for the seller?
yeah,
So, you know, each seller has different motivations and different needs. And, you know, like you said, you're not going to use a hammer when you need a wrench. So you may want to, you know, if a sub two makes sense for them and they're extremely motivated and they're good with that and they understand all the underlying risk and it's been disclosed and they're comfortable with you because you actually are tying yourself to that seller and that mortgage for potentially a long period of time. And
yeah,
that's important that, you know, everybody's on the same page when we start that up. So, you know, a cash deal is easy. Boom, you show up at the table, right? Your cash goes in, the
yeah,
deal's done, and they walk away. You never see them again. Some of these
yeah.
deals where it's a, you know, a sub two or it's a, you know, owner finance deal, you're making payments for a long period of time to that seller or for that seller.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And in the owner financing deals, you know, that has to be the right seller, right? The seller may not, depending on how the deal is structured and the financing that they're providing back, they might not be walking away with a lot of money, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And in those cases, you have to find a seller that actually is okay with that, right? And understands how that all works and how that makes sense. And maybe the stream of income provided by the mortgage payments that you're making back to them is the solution instead of a lump sum of cash, right?
Yeah.
Uh, you know, but each deal is different and each seller is different, right? And as you investors are out there looking for your different deals, that's really kind of the key to this, right? Is understanding your seller and what your seller is looking for, right?
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
have really in any contract, right? Whether it's over real estate or whatever the case may be, right? That's kind of one of the fundamental things is understanding the other side of the contract and what their goals are, what they're looking, and having a good understanding and appreciation of that, and then fitting together the win-win that you were talking about, Bill, right? What makes the
Yeah.
most sense for both sides? Because if it's just totally one-sided, the deals usually are not going to they're not going to go through.
Yeah, yeah, and you know your reputation's on the line, especially these things that you know where they've got a pain point, and you're trying to solve that problem quickly. So I think one of the things that we're going to come back to a lot is communication, right?
Yeah.
Like, can you ever over communicate? Probably not, right? Like, you need to make sure that everybody understands what's going on, even in a cash deal. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you know, you're going to be selling the house, and this is what's going to happen, and you know, you're leaving everything in there, and you're leaving this
Yeah.
behind, and you know, we're paying this off, and make sure that everybody understands, and
Right.
you know how that plays out in the future. But some of these other more creative ones are got a lot more moving parts.
Yep.
You've
Absolutely.
yeah, so you've also been very helpful. We've closed a couple commercial deals, some of
Yeah.
our storage operation, and you've been able to help us get those closed and also kind of research some of the lien laws and how
Mhm.
it's a totally different animal, right? It's not a tenant in there anymore. It's kind of a tenant, but it's basically their
Right.
stuff's living in there, and it
Right.
falls under a different classification as to how you know evict or whatever you want to call it, remove
Totally.
that property. Yeah, so you've been helpful with that.
Thank you.
So there's a lot of things outside of just straight closing that you can do.
Yeah, and that's where the law practice and the legal expertise comes to play, right? So in
Hmm.
West Virginia, you have to have an attorney do a closing, right?
Yep.
In Maryland
Yep.
and Virginia and Pennsylvania, that's really not the case, right? Any licensed title person can do
Mhm.
those closings. But that really kind of, again, that separates, where that expertise and that depth of knowledge as an attorney does come in handy, right? So,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think if I remember correctly, we did some corporate work for you guys as far as corporate formation stuff, right?
Hmm.
And we
Hmm.
did,
Did that
the
too. Yeah.
research into the lien laws, and that's, um, and how that differs dramatically, really, from,
Mhm.
landlord-tenant law is, there's a big public interest in there in making sure that tenants aren't taken advantage of, and there's a lot of responsibility on you, the investors and landlords, to, make sure that you're giving proper notice and, sufficient housing and everything else. Whereas I think things are, I think you can boil them down to one word, a bit simpler
Mhm.
for the storage unit business, if you will, right? There's not
Yeah.
as big of a public or societal
Yeah.
responsibility
Yeah.
for making sure there's a roof over somebody's head as it is opposed to, putting a roof over their stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
It's just a different process and
Yeah,
procedure, and reading some of that, trying to find where those laws are, or getting that information and reading through it can be a little overwhelming, or just
yeah,
there's too much information out there, and what's right, what's the actual law, let's break it down to the fine points. Here's what we need to do, these six
yeah,
things.
yeah.
So that's been helpful. What kind of what does your business kind of look like? What's like the percentage of what you do there? Like
Well,
investors, realtors, this other kind of stuff we've been talking about.
we do probably about 30% of our business is investor related, right? Whether it's helping you acquire the property in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Through the variety of different ways, right? The cash deals, the subject twos, the wholesale deals, the variety of ways that the properties are acquired by the investor. And then a lot of times, right, there's the investors that are following the Burr method, right?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Hmm.
so there's usually a hard money to get into the property. Um, and if you're lucky enough, maybe it's provided by Bill and Mike. Um, and then there's, usually those are short term, right? High interest rate, short term, get in
Hmm.
for 6, 12, or maybe 18 months, depending on the deal, and do a lot of renovation work. Get the property really turned around and back into that top notch living space so that you can get the best rents for them. And then get out, get out of that long term or that short term financing and into a longer term type of
Yeah.
scenario. We've got a couple of our regular investors that we work a lot with are in the process right now of doing that, where they acquired a property over the summer and they've done all their rehab work and they're already just signed with a new bank to get that exit strategy in line. They'll
Yeah.
be probably closing next month into that longer term financing at better long term rates.
Which is a little shaky right now. I mean, as the rates go up, what you
Yeah,
plan, 3 to 6. I mean, if you've got a loan out there, you've got a project that's 12 months ago, it's a totally different environment. So, um, the puck has moved a lot, I guess you should say, right? So
absolutely it
it's a
has.
lot more challenging to kind of burr out of these things. So that's kind of one of the challenges that we're seeing in our business. We've got a lot of private money out there, and how do we structure it, or what's the right product, or how do we set it up that on the back end that we're going to be safe, or
Right.
still cash flows, right? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So couple cool things that you've done for us. When I think about some of the deals we've done with you, where I know there was a couple times where we've been doing what we do for a long time now, 7 or 8 years or something like that,
Mhm.
and we kind of know how to negotiate with a seller and disclose everything that's going to happen. But sometimes those things get a little sideways, and sellers change their mind, and we have a contractual agreement. And I know there's been maybe at least two, maybe three times where things got real sideways, and you were able to help get that back on track. And we super appreciate that, because those were some really good deals, and we did what we agreed to everything, and we were moving forward, and you helped us get those things back on track. I don't know if you remember the exact details, but maybe that.
I remember a couple of instances, right? So there was one where, and again, I don't represent the buyers. I don't represent really you guys, right? In these these scenarios, right? But we make a good team, and but so there was one case where I got a text message from Mike with a uh-oh, and it was a link to a listing for a property. And I was like, oh, all right, well, what's the uh-oh for? And I open it up. I'm like, wait a second, that address seems really familiar. And, I get to the office. I remember I was on my way to the office. And sure enough, I'm like, wait a second, this is the one that Mike and Bill had just got under contract, a couple of weeks ago, and it's closing in a couple more weeks.
I forgot about that one.
And sure enough, the seller went and listed the property with a real estate agent.
Yeah, I remember that now.
And the real estate agent, it wasn't their fault. They had no idea.
Yeah.
The seller misrepresented and didn't tell his agent that they were already under contract.
Yeah.
So all I did is I simply just said, hey, agent, this property is actually already under contract. You need to withdraw this listing and cancel your listing agreement that you have with the seller, because they're going to be in breach of contract. You may have liability, as with tortious interference of contract. If now that you continue to pursue this, right? Yeah. So again, not representing anybody, but just letting everybody know, hey, you may not have been aware of this. Now you are. And sure enough, that agent, came to find out he was not made aware of the fact that they were under contract, and they pulled that listing that morning. It was an hour or two later. Their broker called me and again apologized and expressed how they just weren't aware. They weren't made aware of all the facts, and which I explained to the seller, hey, listen, this is a big deal. You signed a contract to sell your property, and generally, courts will take that very seriously.
You were just letting everybody know what was going on. Like this is the agreement that we had in place. This agreement supersedes this agreement. Not really representing any side, but just kind of helping everybody understand what has already happened and what needs to happen going forward based on what's already been signed. So that kind of brings up a different topic. So with doing so many investor deals, what are kind of some of the things you're seeing when they fall apart? Maybe helpful to an investor from how to keep a deal together, or what they need to do to kind of get these things closed and help their reputation What are those things that you're saying?
Absolutely. And Mike, Bill, you and Mike do an excellent job at really communicating what the levels of expectation are with the sellers. They do not really have any surprises. People get cold feet, like the story we just mentioned, right? Somebody gets in their ear and they start talking and everything else, and then somebody, that other person may get half of the story or whatever. There's always going to be that noise, right? But in the same token, you guys do an excellent job of communicating up front with the seller. Hey, listen, this is what you're going to expect. We're going to sign this contract. You're going to have plenty of opportunity to review it, read it, everything else. You're going to get a call from the title attorney and their office, and they're going to walk you through the things that they need, right? They're going to need to get a payoff. They're going to need to, and they're going to run searches, a judgment search and everything else, and a lien search to make sure that everything's clear. And then we're going to go to closing, right? And it's I've seen these deals fall apart too when you, the investor, make a deal to buy the property for one number, right? But you don't realize that their payoff may be right at that number, or maybe even higher. There was a deal where
that's wild. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a deal, and it wasn't one of yours, but there was a deal where the investor didn't realize there was a second lien. The sellers had a home equity line of credit against the house, in addition to their current first mortgage, and the home equity line of credit had a $50,000 balance. And, they thought that the seller was going to end up walking away with about $30,000. And here, by the time we got everything done, and we got payoffs in and everything else, we're like, hey guys, is this right? The seller's coming to the table with $20,000.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times these people are turning to, investors like yourselves because they're in a tight spot, right?
Yes, right.
And
very true.
They may be in a rough part of their lives where, selling their house isn't the biggest stress point, right? So over communicate, I would say, is the number one solution, right? Really understand their position, what their needs are is number two, right? And, again, just those two things really. Over communicate, understand their needs, and follow through. We were involved in one transaction where, it was a wholesale deal, and the wholesaler wasn't able to find somebody, the end buyer, to purchase the property, and they didn't. And in my eyes, right, if you're signing a contract to purchase this property that has the ability to assign, right, but you don't buy it, well, that's, you're breaking the contract, right? Now, this particular wholesaler, they gave up their earnest money deposit and everything else, and there wasn't an issue with that. And the seller, really, she wanted to sell her house, and she didn't at that time, but she ended up keeping the earnest money deposit, and she was happy enough with that, right? So everybody kind of walked away happy, but at the end of the day, like I said, I mean, it's, follow through, set the expectations and then follow through on them, I think you guys have had a transaction or two where maybe you didn't find the wholesaler, so you ended up just buying the property yourselves.
Probably too many times. Yeah. but we've already underwritten it for where it makes sense for a purchase for us. So if we have to buy it, we do buy it, and then we move on. But that's a good point you brought up. Like, both sides really need to understand the contract, because in certain contracts there can be an out. I can just give you notice that I'm not closing, or we found that the HVAC unit doesn't work, and now the numbers don't make any sense, and now we got to get out, and here's the release. But sometimes, I would say a lot of times, sellers don't read the agreement, and I've seen sometimes where the investor doesn't even know what they've had the seller sign. So it's super important to understand exactly what you're using. What the contract, what binds them and what binds you, and how, if there's an out for either party. And then also, you brought up a great point, something that I've used in my realtor business for a long time. You can't assume, just because you're in this business, that everybody knows how the transaction plays out. You can't assume that. You have to go in, you have to explain, like, here's what we do. We sign the contract. We're going to do another inspection. We're going to send it to the title attorney. We're going to have our funds sent in. The title attorney is going to reach out to you. He's going to probably reach out to your mortgage lender. They're going to make sure the title's clear. They're going to set up a date that we're all going to come to the table. The money will be there and we'll sign. Whatever the process is.
Yep.
It may be, hey, we're going to do an inspection. There's an appraisal. Title's got to come back. Whatever it is, it's important to kind of set the expectations for that seller, so that there's no, scariness along the way, or, they want to back out for something that you didn't disclose in how the process works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, you got to keep in mind, these people may have bought this house as their first home and never sold a house ever in their lives, right?
So true. Yeah. They have no idea what the process looks like.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
clue.
They've literally never sold a house
Yeah.
before. And while you may have bought and sold, 2, 3, 10 houses a month, this is their first time.
Yeah. And they may have bought it 25 years ago. And
Right.
closings are a lot different nowadays than they were 25 years ago. It
Yeah,
changes
they sure are.
it changes every year.
Yeah.
So that's great information, Dave. So you've been a part of our I81 Real Estate Investors group for over a year now, maybe 2 years. It's been a good run.
Yeah.
How has that group helped your business grow?
Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier, Bill, I think it's been a huge part of our business. I look back and, generally, the traditional, buyers and sellers buying their first time home with a real estate agent, that business is a little slower sometimes in January and February. And, just coming out of the holidays, the refinance market's a little slower in January and February. And I looked back at those numbers recently, and we did a tremendous amount of our business in January and February was investor business. And frankly, I mean, just as a relatively new company starting out, our businesses, we've been around for about a year and a half. And that really helped us kind of make it through last winter. And that was really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And it continues to be a part of the business that I really, I rely on as a part of our business on the financial aspect and, the production and volume. But also I really enjoy it because it is different and it keeps you on your toes and it makes you think about things in a different way, do a little bit of research. So it kind of keeps us sharp in that way as well.
That's a really good point. The cool thing about investor business is it's repeat business, and you can get a relationship. I know some realtors are, but that can be more cyclical. Sometimes when the realtor market down, the investor business goes up, depending on what cycle we're in. So yeah, you may have an investor that's going to buy 5 to 10 homes a year, where that one seller and that one buyer, that's just one and done, right?
Right.
So how can our group help you? What are you looking to get out of our group? What can they do for you?
I think we can continue to do the same things that we're doing now. I mean, I love going to these meetups. I love engaging and interacting with the crowd, and that's really the big thing, right? If you haven't used us yet, which I know a number of the people that attend the meetup groups have, but if you haven't used us yet, give us a shot. I think you'll really enjoy how we operate, right? One thing that I kind of think separates us from a lot of the other title companies, and I was actually just talking with another real estate agent about that this morning, is we want to be easy to do business with. And that doesn't seem like a groundbreaking, strategy, right? That's kind of, kind of makes common sense, right? But in the same token, we found that a lot of other title agents or title attorneys or what have you, and not just in West Virginia or Maryland or anywhere, but just kind of generally, that have been in the business for a long time, may just be stuck in the same way of doing things, or they may be so busy that they can't accommodate anything outside the box, or they just are unwilling to be flexible, right? We've closed deals for you guys in our Shepherdstown office. We've closed them in our Frederick office, where I am now. And shoot, I think I've even met Mike at a couple of restaurants, Taco Bell, and a couple other things. And
Yeah.
we've
Whatever
closed
it
deals
takes.
there.
I love
Listen,
that.
yeah, at the end of the day, we want to help you. We realize that you guys are super busy. You've got a lot going on. Closing is not it shouldn't be a big pomp and circumstance type of event for the real estate investor that does this, 3 to 5 times a month, right?
Yeah.
You don't need us to explain the documents that you've already signed the last 5
Yeah.
deals.
Mhm.
Let's
Yeah.
get them in and get them done. Some of our investors want to absolutely walk out without a single shred of paper in hand. Others want paper copies. Some want both. And you think, well, that's just a little detail, but these details matter.
Yeah.
These are
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And really, that's it. We want to work with each of our customers how they want to be worked with. We've got real estate agent teams that we work with that absolutely want to be in the middle of everything and everything else. And then there's other real estate teams that we work with that are like, hey, the seller or buyer, they're your client too. You reach out to them. You schedule closing. Let us know when it is. And hey,
Yeah.
we may make it,
Yeah.
we may not, and the same goes with the investor. We value your relationships. We want to work the way you want to work. We want to be as easy to work with as possible. And we'll do anything and everything to accommodate and make that make us as easy and valuable to work with as we can, while staying within the bounds of the law, and what we're able to do as far as that, title attorney or title company being the third party intermediary.
Yeah. Well, we have definitely appreciated working with you. You've been super helpful, and it's been so good to have you in the meetup, in the I81 group when questions come up, or you can just add your spin, or your take on an issue that comes up in the room. So it's been super valuable to have you in that room and to be a part of this group. And can't thank you enough. And it's been nice chatting with you here on this Facebook Live for the last 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
So I'm sure I'll see you in a closing very soon, and hopefully you'll see some of our our group in there as well. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it,
Bill and Mike, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the partnership and the kind of taking me in as part of the group and trusting us with your business.
It's been rewarding. All right, Dave. We'll talk to you soon. See you at the
All
next
right.
meetup.
Yep. Sounds good.
All right.
See you
Bye-bye.
guys.